Good morning, everyone. If we could, I'd like to go ahead and call this, whatever month it is, it's July the 31st, I believe, of 2024 Monterey County Planning Commission meeting to order. And I'd like to ask Commissioner Shaw to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Thank you. If the clerk would please call the roll.
Good morning, Commissioner Shaw. Here. Commissioner Getzelman is absent. Commissioner Work.
Here.
Commissioner Monsalve.
Here.
Commissioner Roberts.
Here.
Commissioner Deal.
Here.
Commissioner Gomez, Commissioner Gonzalez, and Commissioner Mendoza are absent. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to ask our guest secretary here to provide the instructions for participating in the meeting remotely. Mr. Spencer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So if you are if you're participating in the meeting by Zoom, you can participate by raising or lowering your hand in the Zoom platform. If you're on the Zoom app, you can raise your hand by using the raise hand icon in your reactions tab. If you're on a landline or mobile phone, you can raise and lower your hand by pressing *9 on your phone. You can also email us at pchearingcomments@co.monterey.ca.us. We are monitoring that email and we'll try and address those comments as we receive them in real time. To mute and unmute yourself, if you're on a landline, you can press *6. If you're on the Zoom platform, use the little microphone button to mute and unmute yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. Well done. Glad to see you here taking on these important responsibilities. I'd like to go ahead and ask the clerk to run us through any agenda additions, deletions, and corrections at this time. Madam Clerk?
Yes, on the dais and distributed via email is a non-agenda item letter from a member of the public regarding equestrian centers, letters from the public for agenda item number 2, and letters from the public for agenda item number 3, which were all distributed via email and on the dais this morning.
Thank you. All right, this is a time that's set aside for public comments on matters that are not on today's agenda. If you want to come forward, and you'll have 3 minutes to talk on anything that the Planning Commission is able to attend to, feel free to come on down. I do have some speaker slips, but I don't know that we'll hold to them. Welcome.
Meredith Crowell Camp, Monterey County Highway G16, Carmel Valley. Again, converting permitted guest houses, approximately 450 square feet or smaller, into extra low or low-income housing by allowing them to be rented and to have kitchens would almost immediately help Carmel Valley Route 16 and Carmel Valley and all of Monterey County also to meet California's state requirements for such housing. Compensation to property owners for renting at under market rates would be a reduction of property taxes to be determined by you. Remember, these are already constructed units with permits throughout, but all of Monterey County, not just Carmel Valley. Thank you.
Thank you for your
I
comments.
leave this up here.
You certainly may, and the clerk will fetch it. Mr. Spencer, would you like to, there's an update on when we're going to hear the coastal ADU ordinance. Do you know when those are going to be coming before the commission as an agendized item?
It is planned to be in front of the commission in August. I'll have to verify the exact date, but next meeting or the meeting after that.
Great, and that, at that time, we'll have an actual hearing about ADUs. Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Martha Chavarria. I am currently the president of North Monterey County LULAC. And yes, I am here regarding the ADUs that you just mentioned that are going to be on the agenda and the future items. I'm here today because I've been working with Craig Spencer, Supervisor Church, since back in January, when we found out that this land use plan ordinance states specifically that ADUs are not allowed in North County, Carmel, and Big Sur. So we've been working together trying to understand. I've spoken to individuals at the Coastal Commission, and they basically said, even though all these ADUs were granted, coastal areas are not, because of this land use plan. So I understand that they're working on the language and this proposal. And when I met with them, they said this is, coming in April, May, June. Last was July 10th, then July 31st. So we're here because I have brought this forth and doing a lot of research and trying to understand why these ADUs are not permitted, especially with the housing shortage, obviously with the land use, the properties in North County, the zoning, 2.5 acres, yada, yada, yada. I'm not going to go into the details because I know it's coming forth in the future. But, I understand there are these requirements that the commission, the Coastal Commission has been requesting this. And I also understand that this is an issue that was brought forth back in 2011. So I'm here to bring this forth more of a priority. I'm speaking on behalf of over 50 constituents that we've been working with, patiently waiting to work together and collaborate. I do have a meeting with the commissioner from the Coastal Commission because we really need to understand why this is not permitted and start working together to collaborate and pushing this forward to make affordable housing. We all know that there's, the legal housing and things that have happened in certain areas due to not being able to go forward and work together as permittable housing. So I'm here just because I really want to push forward in making this a priority because we've been patiently waiting for this to be on the agenda. And I know even from there, it needs to go to the Board of Supervisors, then it needs to go to the Coastal Commission. So here we are again, waiting a long period of time to kind of get this forth. So I know I sent letters to all of you. I sent letters to all the elected officials, the Board of Supervisors, Robert Rivas, and so I'm putting this in the forefront, and I'm really hoping that we can work together to push this through. Thank you.
And thank you for your comments. Welcome.
Thank you. A.D. Rangel, Royal Oaks resident. I concur with what Martha just said. The North County Land Use Agreement changes have been in the works since 2011. What is different in the Del Monte Forest Land Use Agreements that allow them to access to permit approvals while North County is being stonewalled? In the Coastal Commission ordinance regulations for ADU, North County, Big Sur, Carmel, and the Del Monte Forest are prohibited because of impacts of public health, safety, and welfare. Property 3392 17 Mile Drive has a 2018 finalized permit to remodel their ADU to add 450 square feet for a total of 1198 square feet finished. How does this ADU expansion exist under the Del Monte Forest Land Use Agreement, a property found in the LDR coastal zone? We did away with caretaker units in 2011 to now call them ADUs, but we can't build ADUs, yet we can expand them? I question how that is possible. 3171 Del Cierro, a coastal residential property found under the Del Monte Forest Land Use Agreement and located within 750 feet from an archaeological resource. Sorry, I'm a bit nervous. We did away, They're from an archaeological resource. Permits between 2012 and 2019, a construction permit was finalized for a new home with an attached caretaker unit of 685 square feet. Entered into evidence was the land use agreement and the Monterey County Coastal Implementation Plan Part 5. According to that, no conflicts were found at their public hearing. There are two other properties I'm not going to go ahead and discuss. If anybody would like to reach out to me, my phone number's on there. But there are permits being applied. There are things happening, but yet North County is just being told straight out the gate, you cannot apply. It's not going to happen. And I think that's unfair to the North County residents. So I'm with Martha. I really request that we push forward to find out what's different in the Del Monte land use agreement that North County can change. Maybe mirror, work together, see what we can do for our residents, our community. Thank you.
Thank you, well done. Next person, come on down.
Hi, good morning. My name is Jordan Caballero, and I'm a North County resident most of my life. Today I'm speaking on behalf of our LULAC group here in North County. I want to thank Craig for coming to visit us a few months ago. And it's unfortunate that our commissioner's not here today, but this is an issue. I know you have a lot of different things that come before you on a monthly basis that are of high priority, and we just want to bring this to your attention. Hopefully it will come up officially in August on the agenda. But I am not only a member of LULAC and the community, but I'm also a licensed realtor. And I have literally been in contract with clients and had to walk away from a deal because of this issue. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the map of the coastal zone, and I realize that the Coastal Commission is out of your purview, but we're just asking that as a planning commission and as the county, we work together in a stronger collaborative effort to maybe potentially redraw some of these lines because they don't make sense. Some of them are decades old. I live in Castroville where ADUs are allowed, and the average lot size is under 10,000 square feet in Castroville, whereas in North County, Prunedale, Moss Landing, some of these lots are 1 to 10 acres, and they're not allowed to add a granny unit or to expand their home, even though they have adequate water, they have adequate septic, and all those kind of things. So it just doesn't really make sense. And I think I'm not sure exactly what went into the original plan, but I think it's time for an update. And I'm just hoping that the county is willing to do everything within its power. Like I said, I was in the middle of a transaction last year, and this property had an unpermitted ADU on it in the Castroville Boulevard area, and the county had red tagged it, and the buyers were willing to pay the fines and update everything, but it was so vague with the county, and they just said, absolutely not, you cannot rebuild. You either have to tear it down and buy it as is, or there's no potential for growth, and that was the whole reason why this family was wanting to purchase this property as a potential investment property or for family members. It seems like a pretty simple solution, and I understand there's saltwater intrusion. I understand there's planning that goes into this, but I just think that there are some solutions that we could, definitely enter into, and I hope that we make it a priority as the Planning Commission, as the county, to really show the Coastal Commission that we're serious about revisiting the terms and the boundaries of this original plan. So thank you for your time.
And thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else in the chambers who would like to come forward and speak on an item that is not on today's agenda? I don't see anybody in the chambers. I don't see any hands up. Madam Clerk, am I missing anything?
I do not have any emails either online.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and close this public comment period, and thank you all for your well-reasoned and competent presentations. I appreciate them. I know we all do. Go ahead and this is the time that's set aside for commissioner comments and referrals. Commissioners, you have anything? Commissioner Roberts.
I just wanted to put, if there's anybody listening or in the greater Monterey Peninsula LUAC area, we are in need of LUAC members, and that area is essentially north of the Laurellis Grade to Highway 1, and that committee can't currently meet because there is not a quorum. So we are actively looking for people, and I think we've got at least one more person coming, and it's going to be my plea, I think, every meeting until we get a full quorum.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other commissioners? Commissioner Daniels, did you have something to say?
I was just wondering if Commissioner Roberts can clarify even in more detail what that area is, because it doesn't include the Highway 68 corridor, if I understand correctly. So it's...
When I looked at the map, I believe it's north of Laurellis Grade. It's kind of the Tehama, the Pasadena, all the way to Highway 1. So that
And then
generally,
unincorporated Monterey, right?
yes.
Okay.
So it's an odd one. It has another piece over on the other side of Carmel Valley, too. Very strange. Anybody else on the dais here? Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you. So I don't know if staff can answer this question. I had read an article in the Santa Cruz Sentinel, or a perspective article, where they had a civil grand jury investigation into the 20% of their units that are being rented to low and low income people, and they found out that they were not actually tracking if the people met those numbers, or if they were actually being rented for those amounts that they said they were going to in order to get this approved. And I'm wondering, does Monterey County have any way to track that? Density bonuses aside, are we tracking that these are actually being rented for those rates and to the people that qualify for those?
So there are different scenarios where there's income qualifications. Where the county has required a deed restriction as part of an affordable housing component of a development, or if we've approved a fully 100% affordable housing development that came with restrictions, we do income qualify all potential residents, either leasing, renting, or buying, before they purchase the property. Then we also ensure that when it comes time for refinancing or sale or any change in the title, that deed restriction stays with the land, and that it's then affordable to the next family for an affordable price. So there are other nonprofit organizations that offer housing that the county doesn't income qualify in the county.
Yes, go ahead.
Through the chair, thank you, because I'm still confused. I get that, but I'm still a little bit confused. So if you could, if I could ask for more clarification. So are there instances where a builder would build a subdivision and have 2 or 3 homes that are maybe not deed restricted? Like, is there a situation that happens in Monterey County where a developer would have these low-income units and there would be no deed restriction? And would that situation arise where we wouldn't be tracking it and we're just kind of on the honor system? Does that exist?
We may want to come back with more information on this, but I think, anything that has been approved that is a mandatory affordable component of a development since 80s, I want to say, maybe before that, but when we had our inclusionary housing ordinance come into play, has been deed restricted. And those units, we do monitor and income qualify tenants for.
Did you want additional information, Commissioner Shaw?
No, and thank you for that, Mr. Spencer. I did have another subject that I wanted to ask about. Thank you. So we all got this non-agenda item about Chaparral Ranch in Marina, the equestrian center, and I was curious to know. I did kind of a deep dive on what had happened with their locations up in the Bay Area, and I was definitely highly concerned. And is this something that code enforcement and or animal control would potentially investigate? Not necessarily because there's been a direct complaint about the Marina location, but because I think there's enough concern based on their history in other cities that they should maybe be looked into. And do we want them conducting business in Marina? Or are they conducting it in a safe and humane manner?
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll turn it over to Mr. Spencer, but I believe that location is within the city of Marina, so we would have limited ability to do anything. But Mr. Spencer?
Yeah, I think that there is a purview for animal control, but not for HCD enforcement.
Thank you. Anybody else on the dais have a comment or referral they would like to make at this time? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and move on from that to finally our agenda item number 1, which is approval of the consent calendar. Is there anybody on the dais or the staff who would like to pull any items from the consent calendar? Seeing none, I'm going to ask for public comment. Anybody in the public like to speak on the consent calendar? There's nobody in the chambers. I don't see any hands up on Zoom. Madam Clerk, am I missing anything?
No, and we do not have any new emails either.
Thank you. That being the case, I'm going to close that portion of the meeting and come back to the dais. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar? Commissioner Work, are you leaning forward?
Yes, I'll move to accept the consent calendar.
Is there a second? It's been moved by Commissioner Work, seconded by Commissioner Roberts, that we approve the consent calendar. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, no. And the consent calendar is approved. And we have another member of the LUAC, yay. So now we're going to go ahead to our scheduled matters, and I'm going to, at this time, take my prerogative to move item number 3 to before item number 2 on our agenda. Actually, I'm going to move it to number 2 all the way to the end of the scheduled items. And this is because we have so few people here today, I don't want to lose a quorum prior to being able to do work on the other items, which means at this time we'll move directly to item number 3 on our agenda, which is PLN 210098, the Coconut Oak LLC, formerly LB Home Buyers LLC. And who is presenting? Ms. Vu, or is that, are you going to present us the staff report on this? Please, thank you.
Pardon us with, we are working through technical difficulty, and we will be connecting and presenting shortly.
Good morning, Planning Commission and Chair Dale Christina Vu, Project Planner for PLN 210098, Coconut Oak LLC, formerly known as LB Home Buyer LLC. This item was continued from February 28, 2024 Planning Commission hearing after HCD planning staff received public comments alleging potential violations on the subject property. Code enforcement staff investigated and found that the complaint had no merit, and the case has since been closed. The property is located at 27610 and 27612 Schulte Road, Carmel Valley, within the Carmel Valley Master Plan. The property is located within the Carmel Valley River floodplain, quarter-mile from the Carmel Valley Road, and the property is zoned low-density residential, 2.5 acres per unit, the Design Control District, Site Plan District, and Residential Allocation District overlay. The applicant is applying for an administrative permit to allow a transit use of a residential property, in this case, 2 single-family dwellings for remuneration, also known as short-term rental. Consistent with the policy and regulation of transit use of a residential property, the applicant submitted an operation plan which included 2 existing residential dwellings on the subject parcel. Both residences contain 3 bedrooms, limiting each dwelling to a maximum of 6 occupants, with a maximum total number of 12 individuals per rental contract. Though there are 2 residents on site, only 1 rental contract is allowed at a time. The rental period is between 7 and 30 days. Adequate on-site parking is available with 6 designated parking spots for guests and 2 designated for employee. The existing single-family dwelling is subject to the county's noise ordinance. Quiet hours shall be between 9 p.m. and 7 a.m. Site-specific rules established by the owners include no events, no smoking, and no illegal drug use on site. The on-site fire pit, circled in yellow, shall only be gas-operated and never left unattended. The applicant has hired a property manager who lives approximately 11 miles from the rental property and will be available 24 hours a day to respond to tenant and neighborhood questions or concerns. Illustrated here is floor plans and site plan for the existing residence. The front dwelling has 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, and 1 kitchen, while the back dwelling includes 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and 1 kitchen. As mentioned earlier, while going through over the operation plan, 6 guest parking spots are available within the gated property, 3 within the existing carport, and 3 on the driveway. Additionally, there are 2 designated employee parking spots on site. As proposed, there is no off-site parking. The project went before the Carmel Valley Land Use Advisory Committee on March 6, 2023, at a duly noticed meeting. The LUAC members voted 3-2 in support of the project as proposed. Public comments included concerns over noise, traffic, evacuation, and parking within the floodplain. The proposed use will have a similar intensity and character to 2 single-family dwelling and is expected to have no negative environmental impact. Carmel Valley Road is identified as an evacuation route in the 2010 general plan. Given that the project would not intensify the existing land use of the 2 single-family residents, the project would not impair or interfere with the adopted emergency response or evacuation plan. HCD Engineering Service has reviewed the proposed project and the nearby roadways and determined that the road is suitable for this use. The Monterey County Regional Fire Protection District has also reviewed the application and had no comments or raised any concerns about access to the property's development. Additionally, a condition number 4 has been applied to specify that no parties or events are allowed. Members of the public have submitted letters in support of and opposing the project. Similar to the public comments received during the LUAC meeting, the most common theme of their opposition was concerns over increased number of short-term rentals in their neighborhood and the potential increase in traffic and noise that might cause. The letters describe Schulte Road as having too many commercial uses. With 2 existing commercial RV parks located at the end of Schulte Road, the neighbors felt that there were more than enough short-term rentals in the neighborhood, which led to concerns over increased traffic, impacts on evacuation during emergencies, and noise on Schulte Road. Though 2 single-family dwellings will be utilized as short-term rentals, the property is limited to 1 contract at a time, meaning both residences will be rented to 1 tenant, not multiple tenants at any given time. Pursuant to Title 21, Section 21.64.280.2b, and the California Uniform Housing Code, the proposed number of occupants does not exceed the limit set forth in the California Housing Code, which states that each bedroom shall be at least 7 feet wide, have a minimum of 70 square feet for 1 person or 100 square feet for 2 persons. The proposed operation plan includes 2 residences with 3 bedrooms in each that are larger than 100 square feet. Therefore, the proposed use will be comparable to the impacts of 2 single-family dwelling and will not create a negative environmental impact. HCD Environmental Service has determined that the road is suitable for the use, and the Monterey County Regional Fire Protective District had raised no concerns about the access to the property. As for noise, the property rental has gone through the county's review process, and the proposed operation plan is found compliant with the county's policy and regulation. Regarding HCD's ability to enforce the operation plan, HCD code compliance can enforce the terms and condition of this permit. The property is subject to Monterey County's Noise Ordinance, Chapter 10.60, which prohibits loud or unreasonable noise between the hours of 9 p.m. and 7 a.m. Short-term rentals are not exempt from this ordinance. If a complaint is filed with the County Code Compliance Department following the issuance of this administrative permit relating to a violation of the operation plan or condition of removal, the county would investigate the claim. Concerns over a party occurred in the proposed short-term rentals were brought up. To ensure the proposed use will not affect the residential character of the neighborhood, conditions of approval number 4, no events allowed, has been incorporated. There will ensure that the property will only be used for short-term rentals and not as an event space. If the property is found to be in violation of the approved permit operation plan or condition of compliance attached to the administrative permit, the permit can be revoked for noncompliance. Other opposing letters describe Schulte Road already having too many commercial uses. Saddle Mountain Ranch RV and campgrounds and Carmel by the River RV parks are located at the west end of Schulte Road. In addition to these 2 commercial uses, Schulte Road resident claims that numerous residential properties along the road currently operate as short-term rentals. Additionally, the Carmel Valley Association, along with Landwatch, objects to the project and claims that inappropriate environmental review and the need to consider cumulative impacts of Schulte Road. The Carmel Valley Association and LARC also made general comments about short-term rentals in the county of Monterey, including the effect of short-term rentals on housing supply, the neighborhood character of Carmel Valley, and the need for county to stay or deny all applications until such time that the environmental impact being prepared for the revised vacation rental ordinance is adopted by the Board of Supervisors. It was mentioned by the Carmel Valley Association that there are approximately 8 unpermitted STRs on Schulte Road. However, given the lack of information on exact location, it is unclear whether the 3 sites within the orange ring are associated with the RV park and campgrounds. The map also failed to identify short-term rentals that are currently undergoing the permitting process. Given the proximity of both maps, one of the non-compliant STRs within the green circle could potentially be this applicant for PLN 210098, who has ceased operating since receiving the code enforcement citation. The yellow ring indicates other STRs projects that are currently in the permitting process. Additionally, one of the STRs within the blue ring are permitted under PLN 970404, but is currently undergoing a code case violation for non-compliant, being non-compliant for the permit's condition of approval. Though the applicant did receive several opposition, the applicant meets all of the required findings for the approval. Staff recommends the Planning Commission find the project qualifies for a Class 1 categorical exemption pursuant to Section 15301 of the CEQA guidelines and approve the administrative permit to allow transit use of a residential property for remuneration. This concludes staff presentation. The staff is available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Vu. I appreciate the complete presentation. Is there any technical questions for staff? Commissioner Daniels?
Yes, my one question was about, well, actually 2, employee parking spaces. There were 2 spaces for employees, but if they're whole home short-term rentals, what
It's probably for cleaning and landscaping, so just to have like adequate parking for employees that are managing and maintaining the property.
While guests are present at the site? Okay. And then we did get an email that came from, in today's packet, that asked about one of the septic systems. Is that something that you can answer?
So that was reviewed by HB, and they, I believe, let me pull up from the resolution. Hold on, Anna. Do you have the resolution? That they reviewed it, it was like they were allowed a certain number, but it was limited to 12 because. Through HB's review, it mentioned that the capacity is 12 occupants, so that's what they're limited to 12. So from the review, it was adequate.
Okay, and then one more comment just to staff, because I'm so appreciative that we're getting closer to the articulation that I'm looking for when it comes to the number of short-term rentals in the area. So on page 2 of the staff report, again, this is such an improvement from what I had addressed in past hearings, but there are, okay, if approved, this is right before the discussion, if approved, the granting of this administrative permit would allow the establishment of the 11th permitted short-term rental in the Carmel Valley Master Plan area. I'm still looking just for a sentence that says that this total does not include, and however you want to articulate it, the large number of unpermitted STRs operating in the Carmel Valley Master Plan area, or something like that, just so that we're not completely delivering this statement without the context that there are so many, even just the photograph that you showed, discounting perhaps the number that are on Schulte Road alone, although I have heard that Saddle Mountain is able to rent some of their units as short-term rentals, so it could be both. But just want to make sure we add that context when we make this statement, and we're getting so much closer, so thank you very much.
Through the chair, just a point of clarification, you would like that information in the staff report, or is that something you're looking for in the resolution in the future?
We've had various iterations of this in the staff report and the resolution, so I'm just looking to have it clarified in both places, just so that context is not overlooked. And this is, as I said, a real improvement from, there are only 10 others in Carmel Valley, which was where we started.
Thank you, Commissioner Daniels. Commissioner Shaw?
Thank you. I just was to clarify, when they say that it's limited to 12 occupants, is that like on the property at one time, or could they have other guests visiting during the day? And is that number, because I've seen this in other applications where they've limited the amount of guests during the day as well, who are not staying overnight.
To the chair, currently in the operation plan, there is no limit, that they do not state a limit for guests, visiting guests. But then,
Commissioner Monsalve?
That raises a question for me then regarding the capacity of the septic system. Because if the septic system has a capacity of handling 12 people, how would the septic system deal with the 12 plus an unlimited number of guests?
Through the chair, so the operations plan includes no events. That doesn't exclude daytime guests, and that isn't clarified in the operations plan or as conditioned. When the Environmental Health Bureau reviews the project, they're looking at septic capacity in terms of occupants, so that would be an overnight guest. I'm not sure that their review or their capacity to review includes an assumption of daytime guests. That would be the same if it were to operate as a single-family dwelling and not as a short-term rental.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Roberts?
I have a question kind of along the same lines regarding enforcement. If, I'm guessing this would be a neighbor that reported that they noticed more than 12 people or however many cars are permitted. I can't remember, I know in the past we've heard people talk about cameras and the property owner can view those remotely and, then enforce or whatever they have to do. Does this site have any of those kind of features? That may be a question for the applicant, but as far as you guys are aware, I guess.
it's on operation plans.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, obviously, the applicant would be able to help us understand some of those things. If there, I've got a couple of questions, the first of which being, there are 2 single-family dwellings on this property. If those were to be rented to long-term tenants, could they be rented separately, like to 2 families?
Through sure, yes.
So we need to refer everywhere to 2 houses, since we're losing 2 houses for families for long-term rentals with this application. So that really, the housing unit question is high on my mind after all of the work we did on the housing element. And you said that these units had been rented out as vacation rentals previously. Had there been any complaints or issues that arose during the time that they were rented out?
Through sure, not that I'm aware of. What? Oh, the one, the question? I was unaware. The only one the short-term rental was recently was not. Oh. Wait. Oops. Not that I'm aware of.
All right. And finally, is anyone aware how many times this property has been evacuated within the past 5 years? We've had both fires and floods in the vicinity, and I know there's been evacuation orders up and down that road. And I believe this property would have been subject to them. And I'm just interested in the actual history of emergency response because Schulte Road is, as we are all aware, one way in, one way out, and that one way in and out goes over the Carmel River. So I'll just leave that there. Perhaps the applicant can respond to that as well. If there are no further technical questions for staff, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing and call the applicant to say whatever they would like to say about this project. If you would care to do so. Come on down. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you. My name is John Lewis. I'm the owner of 27610 Schulte Road and Coconut Oak LLC. I sat on the dais for 3 years as a planning commissioner, and I now know why people that walk up to the podium are a bit nervous. You guys are a little intimidating. So today I'm just a resident. Thank you for your service. So I want to try to address all your questions. First, I just want to clarify that my wife and I and my 2 little boys that go to Tularcitos live in one of the homes. And so there will only be one home that's available for rent. And so when you make the reference to, well, will there be 2 houses taken out? That's not the case. In no particular order, I was just kind of writing some notes based on your questions. Just wanted to clarify there have been 0, we've lived there for 5 years, there have been 0 noise complaints or issues that we've had. And I wanted to point out too that in relation to the number of cars and parking and that sort of thing and septic concerns, we're very strict. There's no events and no parties. I'm raising my family there, and even just for that reason, it's not something that we're willing to compromise on. We do have cameras, and it's throughout the property, obviously not indoors. We respect people's privacy, but it's on both fire pits, it's on both entrances, on both parking areas. We're notified when those are triggered and they are watched. We have a professional property manager for those reasons, to keep things, as professional and consistent as possible, as maybe we might be out of town and that sort of thing, to watching out after the property and looking out after our neighbors. And did I miss anything that you guys rose and question from the dais?
Well, first question would be, have you had an opportunity to look at all the conditions of approval, and are those acceptable to you?
Yes.
I'm still confused over the staff report indicating that there are 2 houses and they could both be rented out in a single contract. If, however, you are resident on one site, this should only apply to one specific residential unit. Is that the case?
Yes, it's a great question. We're not car people, and it's actually a really great income for us. Once or twice a year for these big events, larger groups want to come in and rent both houses, and we're happy to jump into our RV and go for a weekend or a week-long camping trip so we can get some revenue.
Thank you. That helps a lot.
Sure.
But otherwise, you are resident on site full-time?
Yes.
Thank you. Much appreciated. Are there additional questions for the applicant? Commissioner Daniels?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Lewis. And I am confused because I also did not realize that you were living in one of the houses on the property. So why is the off-site property manager necessary?
It's just, we have a thriving and growing design build business. We've got our hands full. We've got 2 children, and we just want to operate this very professionally and by the book. And for this level of rental, there's a lot of pieces that need to come into place, and expectations are pretty high. We also realize that this is a sensitive subject with our neighbors, and we want to do a professional job.
So just through the chair then for staff, that is something that needs to be clarified in the resolution, because it did state that the owner is not within the 30-minute response time, and therefore you have an off-site manager, property manager. And the owner being on-site is a very different scenario, even if they've hired a property manager.
Yeah, so there have been, thank you for raising that. So really the property manager is there to kind of silence some of the noise in our life as it relates to like bookings and cancellations and, you know, like just petty complaints and that sort of thing. And we are on site, you know, most and all of the time if there were to be any issues. I also wanted to address that I read through some of the letters that the, I guess, neighborhood or Carmel Valley Association submitted and accusations that we are out-of-town investors, and who's this LB home buyers, and who's Coconut Oak, and I'm here to stand before you today and say that's me. I live here. I have a business here. We have 2 kids in school here.
Thank you. Commissioner Shaw?
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, at the beginning of your presentation, you stated you were the owner of 27610. Do you own both properties or just that one?
I do. And actually, I remodeled them both myself. I used to live in 27612. And then as soon as I was able to finish 27610, we moved into that and started renting the front. And I will acknowledge that we rented these out prior to getting this permit. I think like a lot of other people in the county and paid our TOT tax. And as soon as we, you know, sort of realized that this process was happening, we stopped that. We have a long-term renter in the front. Which is preventing both of our elderly parents to be able to come visit us. They live from out of the area and be with their grandkids and that sort of thing. And so that's another reason why we want to have a short-term rental ability, is to be able to host our aging parents and let them be with their grandkids there, live out of the area.
Through the chair, so how long has your long-term renter been renting that front house for?
It's been a few months now.
And, okay.
And it sat, well, actually, in fact, my elderly dad was staying in it prior to that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Daniels?
So I'm guessing you can see what a difficult issue short-term rentals and housing is for Carmel Valley residents, and why this has gotten to the level of correspondence that we've gotten on this. And I'm curious if there's a way to simplify this application. You know, for staff, I guess this would be a question for you as well. If there's a way to make this one home. And the reason I say that is because anyone can rent their home for Car Week. I mean, even if we didn't have this in place, there is the opportunity to rent your home out for these big events. And I happen to even think, and we can have a more in-depth conversation about whether or not I'm right, I'm happen to think you could do it 12 times a year, you know, in terms of just the ability to rent your home for 30 days or more, 12 times a year. You could translate that to probably getting away with renting your house 12 times a year for a week at a time, if there were that many events that you wanted to do that for. So I'm just wondering if, because the concern about the housing supply is so significant and real, and we did just get through a grueling housing element process, if you're living in one of the homes, if there's any room here to just bring this down in scope, and if you're living in one home, whichever home that is, applying for the application for the other home as the short-term rental, knowing that people throughout our community hop in their RVs and rent their homes out for the big events anyway already, and that opportunity would still be available to you. I'm just going to throw that out there. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's something you would be interested in considering? We have a chance to come back after the public comment, but.
Yeah, you know, I mean, we would prefer the ability to do both. For one of the reasons is we've endured some pretty significant costs getting both of them up to the standards to be able to qualify for this, including the septics and inspections and all sorts of other stuff. We've been at this for a long time. This is the 3rd time we've come up. And so, you know, if that's the concession, then okay. I guess I'd just like to point out, too, that there's been a lot of talk about there being a tremendous amount of, you know, short-term rentals at the end of our street. We have to, I think, take the brunt of that, and that there's RVs constantly driving past our site, but there's no homes there to rent for families to gather and cook together and be united. If you have an RV, you can go there. If you want to stay in a tent for a weekend, you can go there, but that's not what our place is. Our place is for, you know, families to gather for 7 to 30 days and be able to cook together and enjoy a home, not stay in a tent or an RV.
Thank you. If there's nothing else, I'm going to go ahead and you may sit down and we'll have an opportunity to respond after anyone else speaks in public comment, and invite other members of the public, anybody who would like to speak on this matter, to please come forward. You'd have 3 minutes. Seeing nobody leaping forward from the chambers. Oh, here we have someone. Welcome. I see. Well, welcome now. You can go ahead and pull that microphone down to somewhere convenient for you. Thank you.
I was one of the people that wrote a letter demanding that this not be permitted, just to let you know. My name is Meredith Kroll, and I live on Schulte Road, about 3 properties from this. I want to make a notation that there is no restriction in this for allowing a vehicle to be placed on the property at the same time the house is being rented and it be an RV. So the impact of the rental could include a full-scale RV, which would not have anything to do with the septic tank system, because the RV has capacity in it for human waste. There's nothing in there. So the impact is much greater, and the number of people on the property could significantly be much bigger. And the other thing that's not mentioned is that Monterey County, the impact on the maintenance of Schulte Road will be highly significant. It has taken me years and years to finally get 25-mile-an-hour speed limits on the Monterey County maintained road, which is 3/4 of a mile. The property in question is on private road, not Monterey County. But the impact on Monterey County expenses is still impacted the way the 91 other rental units in Carmel by the Sea or Carmel by the River and Saddle Mountain. And yes, because Monterey County gave up maintenance and supervision of the RV parks, Saddle Mountain has at least 6 tiny homes that house each not less than 6 and as many as 12 people in those units. So the impact on the traffic, just the number of vehicles, is incredible. I request denial.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the chambers who would like to speak? Please come forward.
There. My name is Tammy Lewis, also owner of the property.
Normally, we would invite you come forward as part of the applicant's time, but you'd be welcome to do that once everyone has spoken.
Okay.
Thank you. Is anybody else in the chambers who is not the applicant or the applicant's family, which is also the applicant? Seeing no one, I see one hand up on Zoom. Madam Clerk, Larry Bacon.
Am I unmuted?
Apparently so.
Hello? Am I unmuted? Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Chair Deal, Commissioners, I'm Larry Bacon. I live very close to this property, although on the other side of the river. Listening to Mr. Lewis, it sounds like we have some shifting sands here that change the character of the project. The last time this was in front of me was in February. Circumstances have changed Since then, the commission undertook a extensive hearing on the short-term ordinance and has forwarded recommendations to the Board of Supervisors for consideration in about a month. I am concerned that this is being approved in view of a pending ordinance that would not allow, in all likelihood, this type of use on this property. And I hope you consider that in your decision, perhaps shortening the period that the permit is approved for. Now, I think projected at 3 years. I want to talk about some flaws on the project, however. The Lewises, I think, acquired this property with 2 older homes and a septic tank that was built in the 1980s. That septic tank today could not be replaced. It would be illegal under current regulations for septics. So the applicant, as I understand it, applied to remodel 2 structures. And it would have been fine if that was a simple upgrade to the buildings. They added a septic, the existing septic that's down by the river, next to the river, would have been okay. But let's look at what really happened, and I think you can see it in the pictures that were presented. Basically, these buildings were taken down to the ground, destroyed, and totally rebuilt. So you have a brand new equivalent of a brand new project. And I believe that the county should have required a complete new septic system to serve these new buildings. It was really more than a remodel, and in that sense, I think the project was misrepresented. And then secondly, I do believe that from the beginning of the acquisition of this property, it was intended to be a short-term resort hotel to attract transient occupancy. Hidden behind a very tall fence. You can't see it. You cannot see it from the road. So I am really very skeptical. I appreciate the fact that the family is living there now. That could easily be changed at some future time with substantial income from this property, supporting another acquisition. And I hope you will recognize the problems that we have here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bacon. I don't see any other hands on Zoom. Madam Clerk, am I missing anything?
No, and we do not have any new emails either.
Thank you. That being the case, I'm going to invite the applicant or the applicant's family forward to say whatever you'd like to say in response to what we may have heard in public hearing.
Thank you. I'd just like to address the first comment about our RV that's parked there. We do park our RV there, and we do take it out on camping trips with our family, but it's not available for rent. And it would never be a part of any of these. Don't know that there was anything else I have to respond to those particular comments. To Mr. Bacon, yes, and we did get a permit to replace one of the septic tanks. No, we did not take the structures down and completely rebuild the houses. We replaced the windows and the siding, so it appears like that. But I don't know what else to say. Are there any other questions for me?
I don't see any. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to staff. Oh, is there? No, we've already heard. No, if you've already spoken, that's all you get. But if you would like to speak, miss, you're welcome to come forward and do so.
Thank you. Again, I'm Tammy Lewis, John's wife. And just wanted to say very plain and simply, our family lives there. We moved to Carmel to put our kids in a really good school district. It's an expensive place to live. The short-term rental certainly helps us supplement and be able to afford to put our kids into that school. We have never had a noise violation or complaint on the property. We take very good care of the property, and we expect that out of all of our guests. We're not renting out RVs. We're not allowing other people to bring RVs to our property. There's no possible way for people to have additional people there. And if it's helpful to have a daytime number of guests allowed, we can easily put that in. I'm not opposed to that. And yeah, when we travel, we really like to travel into Airbnbs too, for the ways that we can connect, which is different than what you do in a hotel. So I'm asking that this gets approved. We've been at this process for a long time. We know it's a difficult decision, and we appreciate your thoughtful consideration of all the aspects. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the family like to speak? Seeing no one come forward, I am going to go ahead and close the public comment period on this and bring it back to the staff. Staff, would you like to respond to anything we've heard in the public comment?
Through the chair, I guess we would like to respond to the restriction for the RV. I believe the applicant already testified that the RV on site isn't being used. It also is not part of the rental included in the operations plan. In terms of maintenance and the use of Schulte Road, it is a bit complicated because a portion is county maintained and another portion is privately maintained. But the applicant would be held to only what is required. So if it is privately maintained, then they would have to be consistent with that agreement. And then should the applicant want to modify the project, which would limit the short-term rental to only one single-family dwelling, staff would request that they update the operations plan, and then in addition, we'll have to make modifications to the resolution.
Thank you. So just to clarify, if this property is accessed on a private road, do we need a finding saying that it is fulfills all the requirements for the access ordinance? Is that something that ought to be in the resolution?
That is correct.
I don't remember seeing it. I could have missed it. Staff, anything else? All right, I'm going to bring it back to the commission. Commissioners, Commissioner Shaw, was that your hand up?
All right, thank you. I have two questions. Just to go back to the RV thing, which I hadn't thought about, but I think maybe what someone was asking, in theory, could somebody drive an RV, not their RV for rent, but someone else drive into town with their own personal RV and park it on the site? And would they be considered an overnight guest then, since they're not occupying a bedroom?
Through the chair, so they would be allowed to park an RV if that was the vehicle they are traveling within. The operations plan, again, doesn't allow the use of that as part of the short-term rental, so staff would state that that wouldn't be an allowed use as part of the short-term rental.
Thank you. Through the chair, one more question. Just to be clear, so if we were to grant this as presented, in theory, the applicant could move out of their house as soon as possible and rent both as basically a blank check. They could rent it at the same frequency. There would be no restriction. They could both just be rented.
Through the chair, as proposed, that's how it could work.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just to clarify, they could rent both of the dwellings under one contract.
Through the chair, thank you. Yeah, no, I definitely understood that, but they could rent both houses as long as it was under one contract completely the whole year long if they chose to do so, if this was granted as it's been presented here.
As proposed, yes.
Thank you.
So I have a question, which is how many, if were we to only look at a single one of these houses, How many guests would be allowable under the usual calculation? Assuming we have people living in the other house.
Through the chair, the maximum occupancy per house is 6 guests.
6 guests per house.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Commissioners? Commissioner Monsalve?
Thank you. Taking what Commissioner Shaw said a few steps further, the property can be rented for 12 guests up to 12 guests at one time. I don't recall what it said about parking, but cars for those 12 guests. There is no restriction in there for the family of up to 12 people that comes on site. No restriction prohibiting another few family members from arriving in an RV and parking the RV on the lot, or maybe 2 RVs if there's enough parking between the 2 houses. And there's also no limit as to the number of daytime guests that could also arrive, and I didn't see where they would park, nor did I hear if guests are allowed on street parking. And we also still need a little bit more information on the evacuation history and the evacuation plan. Thank you.
Commissioner Daniels?
Thank you. There was one other public comment that I'm hoping we can discuss, which is that we've been issuing permits for 3 years, for a limit of 3 years. And we are now like 30 days or whatever, a month out from the first hearing before the Board of Supervisors. So there is the potential that we have an ordinance a lot sooner than 3 years for the inland area. I'm wondering if there is, if anyone would, if there's any consideration we should have for 3 years or at the, or upon the adoption of an ordinance. Is that a possible time frame?
I see council leaning forward. Ms. Donlin?
The board will be considering the ordinances sometime in September. I don't have the date in my head, but it's soon. So, I mean, these ordinances could be adopted and effective in the next 2-3 months. So that would be a very short term for all the work and time and money they put into bringing this application forward.
That's true. But again, we're talking about housing in Carmel Valley, and the ordinances are coming forward for a reason. And so I just do want us to at least address the public comment. Someone had raised the 3-year term and is asking about that. So we should answer that question.
And if I could add, the board will be considering the ordinances. We don't want to presuppose what the board's going to do and what's going to happen. But the ordinances the board will be considering do have amortization provisions that speak to the issue if they were to receive this administrative permit today. I can't rattle it off right now because I have too many things in my head. Craig might be able to, or Taylor Price. I don't know if he's on. He certainly could let us know. But there's provisions planned if those are adopted for that situation.
Even in a situation where someone is in a low-density residential, Rena, what residential, what's the zoning?
LDR, I believe.
Yeah. Got it. Okay, thanks.
Mr. Spencer, did you want to weigh in?
No.
No. Wise.
Taylor, are you out there?
That's all right. I think we can get there if we need to. Commissioner Shaw?
Thank you. Forgive me because I don't remember this. Just out of curiosity, if this were to come forward, let's pretend that the ordinances were accepted by the Board of Supervisors as they are, no changes, and then this were to come forward after those were adopted, would this be at all permittable under that upcoming ordinance?
Muted myself before I started. I'll weigh in on that one. Right now, as drafted, a short-term rental would not be permissible in Carmel Valley in the residential zones. So it would not be allowed. They would be allowed potentially a limited vacation rental, which is limited to, I believe, 3 per year, if I remember correctly. So that is intended to capture the idea that you can go out of town a couple of times a year. It would still be subject to a vacation rental operator permit, but not to a use permit.
Thank you. I'd just like to weigh in here and say that I am not comfortable with the project as it's currently presented. If the project were to come back and say that it was for one house and that the other house was going to be occupied by the owner and operator of the short-term rental, that we had a limit on daytime guests, and that we had the appropriate findings necessary for access, and we considered the amortization I'm not willing to assume that the short-term rental ordinance will be adopted because my history leaves me a little bit cynical about this after the past decade and a half. But I would consider wording such that it was going to be either the 3-year period or the amortization provisions as provided under any ordinance that might possibly be adopted at some time in the future, whenever that was, whichever were shorter. Those are the things that are on my mind right now, but I am not comfortable with 2 homes being rented out at this time or being permitted for vacation rentals. I am comfortable, and as I have been with this peculiar property, treating it as if one home was the resident manager. That, to me, does seem more like a hosted vacation rental, which I am much more comfortable with its effects on our community and even on our housing stock. And of course, were it only to be one house that were being permitted, the numbers would need to reflect that, as well as the provisions in the operation plan with respect to emergencies and all the things that others have mentioned. So I would advocate for a continuance for those, to discuss those changes with the applicant, see if they're acceptable, and insofar as they are, to come forward with a revised revised staff report, a complete staff report, would be my personal thought. So I lay that out there. Commissioners? Commissioner Daniels?
And if that was something that the commission was interested in, just for the applicants who've been at this for a long time, I'm curious if there would be space to continue it to a date certain and as soon as possible.
Staff, do you want to comment on the potential for reasonably expeditious continuance?
Yes, through the chair, we're checking the calendar for upcoming hearings.
That's a lot of findings, is my concern. We really need to have the staff report adjusted in a couple of important ways. So I'm hearing through the grapevine and through my psychic radar, not on the record, that there's some willingness with the applicant to work for this as expeditiously as possible. But we're still waiting for staff to tell us, if it were a date certain, how soon it could be.
Through the chair, if it would be tight, but the next planning commission that isn't full is 9/25. Staff report would have to be distributed by 9/18, so we would have to work quickly with the applicant.
That's a month and a half?
And through the chair, just as a reminder, if you close the public hearing today, this could come back on consent with a resolution memorializing what the commission has maybe approved today, if that would help fitting it in on a schedule.
Commissioner Monsalve?
Thank you, through the chair. I feel like there's enough in play that it could come back pretty different from what we're seeing now, especially, for example, if they remove one of the homes from the short-term rental application. So I think that there would be enough changes that I don't want to close public comment yet.
Understood. I appreciate your point, Commissioner. I also would point out that because something is on consent doesn't mean it can't come off of consent should those concerns be important to you at that time. But it does give us the opportunity, if there aren't concerns, to move it more quickly. So my inclination would still be to go ahead and close public comment at this time, which I already did, but we could talk about how we would be going forward. Commissioners, any recommendation for action? Commissioner Roberts.
I'm actually going to throw out an alternate viewpoint. And as much as this is not something that I want to see happening in our county, and knowing, and obviously approving it in a way that potentially both of these houses could be rented as short-term rentals, a 3-year period is a really short time frame to me. And we reduced it to that to give people an opportunity to legalize their businesses. And I honestly think I would be in favor of supporting the project as it's proposed today, with the understanding that 3 years is a very short period of time, and we don't know when an ordinance is coming. And I think that the applicant, I mean, if they want to reduce it to one house, that's fine. But I suspect their intent is maybe to move on at some point anyway and see how this works and allow the neighbors an opportunity to see how this plays out.
Commissioner Shaw?
Question, in light of that, realistically then, what kind of recourse do the neighbors have if this is a problem, if there are issues? I mean, in theory, it's great, call code enforcement. We all know, those who've called code enforcement, that's basically pointless. A noise ordinance and enforcement is basically pointless. So what would happen if this was a problem? And then what happens at the end of the 3 years when it's just granted not through this kind of process, so the public wouldn't be able to have input? Those are my concerns with that.
Okay, if I'm very interested in the discussion. It is always important. I'm just wondering that given our discussion of consent, whether staff would potentially be able to bring this back sooner if we took that route. I think we have, again, by psychic radar, some indication that the applicant would be willing to cooperate and work with you, at least efficiently. It's not like we have somebody who's opposed to that, at least so far. While they're doing that, Commissioner Shaw?
Thank you. Is the rush only so that we can squeeze in before the ordinance is possibly adopted? No? Okay, thank you.
Not from my point of view.
I'll jump in just as a commissioner. I do think that this was continued from February, if I remember correctly. And so I think in just out of respect for the applicant, I think we want to give them a response as soon as possible.
So through the chair, the next meeting would be 8/14, and the staff report would be required to be finalized and loaded by 8/5 and distributed by 8/7. And then 8/28 is the next available date, which would allow staff a bit more time to work with the applicant.
I see Mr. Spencer nodding his head, I think at the 8:28. Is that what the nod means? Yes. My psychic radar is working overtime here today. All right, so we've heard from the commissioners. We've heard an alternate view from Commissioner Roberts. Does anybody wish to make a motion at this point? Commissioner Daniels?
Yes, I really do like the motion suggestion, or maybe I'm speaking ahead, but what Commissioner Deal had stated, I really liked. And so returning on 8/28 on consent, addressing the access ordinance requirement consistency, addressing the changes to the resolution and the plan that's in place for guests, to allow for one home to be rented on this site versus two, with the owner living in the other home. And then the additional 3 years or the amortization that will be, will exist in an ordinance if it is adopted prior to those 3 years taking precedent. I don't know if that made sense, but that's, if there was something missing from what Chair Deal had stated, I would like to have that added. Thank you very much. That's my motion.
Is there a second? Dead silence. Is there a second for that motion? Commissioner Monsalve will second the motion. As staff, would that motion make sense to you? Do you have everything you need should it pass? Yeah, I see a nod from Ms. Kinga, so that's a good start. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And any opposed, no. And the motion carries. And I would add that I hope that it was understood that I was, in my remarks, continuing it closed, so be on consent. So there wouldn't be additional public comment. I did see a hand up on Zoom, and I just want to clarify for that person that public comment had been closed, and we are not at the moment taking it. So that's why we were not calling upon you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and give us a brief recess here to catch our breaths, and let's be back at 10:30, a little after 10:35. Let's run it along. Thanks. All right, everybody, if we could resume our places. I know we're having a good time here at this Planning Commission meeting of July the 31st, but we need to resume our places. And we're going to proceed now to our agenda. Oh, I guess we could just state for the record that everybody that was here previously remains on the dais. We're going to move now to item number 4, which is to consider adoption of modifications to the Monterey County Planning Commission rules for the transaction of business. And I'm going to turn the presentation over to Ms. Donlin.
Thank you, Chair Deal, and good morning, Commissioners. For this item today, just a little bit of background. Pursuant to Monterey County Code Chapter 2.48, the Planning Commission is to set rules for the transaction of business. You've done that, and you've had them over the years. In the last year or two, you've made some updates to those rules. Most recently, in October of 2022, you made some procedural rules just to update the rules and make them more technically correct. And then August of last year, you made some more detailed modifications to the rules. And I think since those modifications were made, we've found the need to maybe iron out what we changed a little bit more. And that's what's before you today. I'm going to share screen so we can go over the rules that are in question today that are before you to potentially change. So bear with me while I share. Here we are. So it's really just Rule 12 and 13. And as I said, with applications that you've heard since the rules changed, I think the need has been brought to the surface that we want to clearly identify how certain things occur. So the first rule, the addition to Rule 12, as you see here on your screen, is the addition of some language concerning tie votes. And then I also added, just to be clear, and I believe you already do this, but I just wanted it to be clear in the rules, for a motion to approve that doesn't pass or a motion to deny that doesn't pass. And this actually just happened with our last application. In making your motion, you make clear whether the public hearing is going to remain open or not, because the benefit is when you close it, the matter can come back on consent, and it's just a matter of the commission okaying the resolution supporting whether you denied or approved. So that's what these changes do. And then the tie vote language came up at another hearing within the last 2-3 months. And what I've added is 3 different scenarios of how a tie vote is dealt with. The first one is if there's a recusal of one of the commissioners due to a conflict of interest or abstention and no one's absent, basically the motion doesn't pass. It's a defeat of the project. And that would be memorialized in a resolution, basically stating that the matter was tied, and then lay out the different positions of each side. Number 2 is when you have some members that are absent, such as today, or there's a vacancy that hasn't been filled. In that situation, as opposed to the motion just dying and not being approved, it would be continued to the next meeting or whatever date certain the commission picked. And then 3 covers the situation after number 2, when you're back. If it still isn't moving forward and there's still a tie, then the motion would be defeated. So before I move on, is there any questions on those red lines that are before you?
Mike, I have a quick comment, which would be just clarify that it says must be taken on a date to the next meeting. It says continue to the next meeting, or in the language you used is not there, and I think perhaps it should be on item 2. Because if we automatically continue to the next meeting in the rules, then that's what we would do.
Okay, then yeah, in number 2, I could add or date certain to give you that discretion.
Well, that's what you had actually verbally said, and I just thought that was a good addition. Commissioner Roberts?
I was just going to say for number 2, I guess I don't know, maybe if, I know we had this happen recently, and so if you will give me the understanding behind it, my only concern with this is I think sometimes people wait for people to be absent, or, you know, I don't want that played in a way that,
Well, number one is covering the situation where everyone's here and someone has to recuse themselves, so that conflict of interest isn't going to change. So you're here with the body that you'd have. And then the other one is when you do have people that are gone, that's when you have discretion to not stick. Like today, if before you, the last item was a tie, you would have had discretion on what you want to do.
okay, so we have discretion at that time to decide. Got
Correct.
it, Okay.
As often as we care to do so?
If it states to the next meeting or a date certain, well, no, I guess the answer is no because of 3. The next meeting, if it's been continued as a result of a tie vote, and you can't get past that tie vote, it would constitute a denial.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Monsalve?
Thank you. I don't think number 2, I don't read number 2 as us having any discretion because it says shall cause the item to be automatically continued to the next meeting.
That's true.
There's not really discretion there. If there's a tie vote, the way I'm understanding it, if there's a tie vote and there was an absence or a vacancy, it will automatically get continued to the next meeting, except that, and this part is what confused me, as to matters on which action must be taken on a date prior to the next meeting, a tie vote constitutes denial. So how does that happen? On which action must be taken on a date prior to the next meeting?
I guess to answer your first question, if the commission desires, that shall could become a may, and some discretion could be written into number 2, that you may cause the item to be automatically continued or continued to a date certain, or you could choose the third option, which is the tie vote stands and the motion is effectively denied. And then as that last little paragraph at the end, that would be memorialized in the resolution. As far as matters of which action may be taken or must be taken, I'm having a hard time thinking of an action that must be taken. If there's some kind of deadline or there's some reason that a decision is required that day.
So my concern is, why would we need the word automatically? I don't think that adds anything except confusion. So if we should say, shall cause the item to be continued to the next meeting or available to date certain as determined by the commission, or something like that, whatever the language was you used. But I don't understand, shall cause the item to be continued seems sufficient without using the word automatically, which concerns me.
Yeah, the shall covers automatically. I guess it's redundant. I guess I'd like to get direction from you all if you want a shall or you want a may. Do you want discretion in that situation, or is it?
Commissioner Daniels?
I think we should have discretion because if you've been on the commission for any period of time, there have been long absences. There was a period where a certain seat wasn't filled for a while. And so if it said a tie vote during the absence of one or more members or when there's a vacancy on the commission may cause the item to be continued to the next meeting or to a date certain, we could ask staff at that point, does it look like the seat is going to be filled by the next meeting or to a date certain? That would provide enough information to know that we would actually be able to make a decision. But if we knew that the seats, there's nobody that's applied for that position and it's going to remain unfilled, and we don't see the body changing their minds in the tie vote, it could default, or we could state we would, the tie vote is a denial. I don't know.
Functionally speaking, that's got a problem, which is if you have one group that wants denial and one group that doesn't want denial of the motion, by the way, not the item, then if you wanted denial, you would not vote for the continuance. And so now you've got another tie.
Perfect. Thank you for that. I understand, Martha.
Sorry.
What did it say before, actually? If we could just flip back to the original, that would be great.
You know what? What did it say before? Hold on.
Through the chair, I was going to use the Big Sur update process and go back to the fewest red lines possible and look at what it said before. And instead of changing it from, I think the problem was shall solicit findings for both sides.
This blue language here that's crossed out is what it said before with regard to tie votes.
Oh, yeah. And so instead of saying, I think that our issue was that we had to solicit findings for both sides and then bring it back. And if we just said it shall be considered as a denial and findings will be written and brought back, and then, because that's the way we've always done it, that a tie vote was considered a denial.
If you want to scrap the red lines I proposed and instead make more targeted red lines to what exists now, that's certainly fine. I just want to be clear on what the commission wants so I can make those changes.
Commissioner Shaw, did you have something?
Yeah, thank you, I guess. I mean, I guess I don't understand why we need to bring it back. Like, what, if it can just stay as it is, that it's a denial, and I feel like there's like too much gray area. If one or more commissioners is missing, then it's going to kind of get a revote when it should just be a denial, and that's the end of it, and they can appeal to the Board of Supervisors. Is just my opinion, fairly uneducated and unexperienced opinion at that.
Having been on both sides of this, I would, again, functionally speaking, say Commissioner Daniels' point is well taken. We've had some, it would be venue shopping if it were a place, but bringing things forward when people knew the constitution of the commission would be more favorable to their interest. And so it's important to me that we try to avoid the opportunity for that kind of thing. So I'm happy to have it come, if it's a tie, and like today, if we were 3-3 on something, and if it would say, okay, we're going to come back at a date certain next meeting, or if the date certain that the staff can bring it back, because we don't usually have only 6 people. We would normally have more people. So that would be fine with me. But to say that, as I said, I've been on both sides. I don't like the idea of just having it come down to who is there on that day, and that's the end of the story. Commissioner Shaw?
Okay, thank you. That makes really good sense. So totally out of left field then, could we change what constitutes a quorum so that there was no possibility for a tie, so it's not an even number?
I believe quorum is actually written into the county code. I'd have to verify that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else? I think, well, I'm easy with either way. I think that it's pretty clear with the modifications, what we're saying here. I am also very mindful of what Commissioner Roberts said, which is less is more. I'm really on the less is more rather than trying to spell everything out side normally, because we always forget something when we try to spell everything out. So I'm torn, don't know. What does the commission think?
I was going to ask that we scroll back up so we could read it again.
Mm-hmm.
Scroll back up to the number 2.
That was down here. You mean the proposed number 2? Yeah.
Mr. Spencer, did you want to say something? You're leaning forward with a purposeful manner.
I'm sure I've reviewed these already, but I'm looking at number 3 saying denial of the appeal. And I wonder if appeal is the right word there or not, but just jumping to my mind right now, because it's not always an appeal at the planning commission level.
Well, or defeated the motion, which is the remaining phrase. Which is, again, motion and the item and an appeal are all somewhat different. Ms. Donlin, how do you feel about this discussion? It goes on forever, I know.
Commissioner Shaw mentioned that matters can be appealed to the Board of Supervisors, which is true, but if matters can be finally decided by you all without appeals, that's obviously helpful to everyone, time-wise, staff time bringing appeals, board time hearing appeals. So if people being absent impacts the commission's decision, I think it better if it moves till everyone's here so the full commission can opine on a project.
Commissioner Monsalve?
I think following up on that, if number 2, the tie vote and there's an absence is continued to the next meeting or a date certain, at that point when it comes back to us, do we hear everything again? Are we hearing it's just a repeat so that the commissioners who weren't here get to hear it, or do they have to watch the recording and come prepared and we are ready to move forward on a decision again?
I think in practice, the commissioners would watch the video to hear the essentials of the project so they're up to speed, and then there would be maybe a quick update presentation, and then you all as a commission would decide on the matter. Correct.
Commissioner Roberts?
Maybe you can help me with this, Chair Deal, but in my memory, really the only times we tie, we've never had 10 people here and tied 5-5, or at least in my memory. And it really does happen when people are absent. So, and it doesn't happen often, but also I guess I'm trying to figure out if are we essentially saying we're going to wait for a full commission to make a decision if we can't agree, or it goes back to if it's tie vote, it's a denial. And for me, is the way I'm looking at it. And I don't know. I guess my question is that what the intent is? We're waiting for a full commission to make a decision.
That's the intent written into what's before you, but if that's not what the commission wants, that's fine. And alternatively, the 1, 2, and 3 red lines could be deleted, and it could just be left at this last red line sentence there.
I wouldn't read it that we're waiting for a full commission. I mean, today we have 4 absences. So if if it was coming back and we had, 1 person or 2 people absent, I think that would still benefit a tie, the discussion of a motion with some more points of view. So I don't see it as everybody needing to be there, but more than maybe a bare quorum, which is what we have now. If we were deciding on the general plan update in a situation like this, I would feel as if we were underinformed if we were tied. And if we had 1 absence, I would not feel that way. So I don't get that from the language before us as we've discussed, but I could be wrong. Commissioner Shaw?
Listening to you guys, thank you. Listening to you guys speak, I definitely, it comes up so rarely, as you stated. I just am like, for me, this is totally fine then, because I see the benefits of having more people here. I've seen them recently when it was just a few people and there was a recent tie, how I would have appreciated having more people present for that particular vote. So I'm totally okay with this. I think it happens so infrequently that it's not really even a concern for me to be splitting hairs over this. So thank you.
A good reminder. Thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else want to comment on this before we move forward?
So just to be clear on number 2, I'm removing automatically. I'm going to double check the language or the use of appeal in number 3. And then my last question to you on number 2 is, you do want discretion, correct? So remove the shall and make that a may. May cause the item to be continued to the next meeting or a date certain, so you have discretion that day, or no?
I would vote against that.
Okay.
I like the shall in there. And if it comes back and the same thing happens, then I guess it would be a question of whether we're going to do this infinitely or not. Commissioner Daniels, I'm sorry.
And I would also just add that it also seems like it's more fair to the applicant, because if a decision is denied because it's a tie and it's the size of the commission that we are today, it's not really fair. The bulk of us didn't show up, or many of us didn't show up today. And so I like shall now too.
All right. Commissioner Monsalve?
And also for that same reason, I now like to the next meeting, because for the benefit of the applicant, but also not thinking ahead to those that are here or are not here, the next meeting is much more objective. So now I like Shell, and I like the next meeting.
So not adding date certain then?
I feel like adding date certain, now we're planning ahead. Or who do we know won't be here, or who do we know will be here? But date certain is very objective. I mean, next meeting is very objective.
I would agree with you, except that in my experience, the next meeting's already planned by the time this meeting occurs, and so that is an agenda concern, I would think. So that's why I'm still holding for a date certain, just mechanically. Commissioner Roberts?
I was just going to add the same thing. I think that if we had a big project, that we had to hear again, and it's an hour long, and we already have noticed whatever, I think that we do need some flexibility.
Do we have any sort of, Commissioner Monsalve, did any of that sway your thought?
I can see both sides.
Very well. If there's no further questions or comments on this.
Yep, I'll move on to Rule 13, and then we're finished. As you can see, what the red line language does is it allows a continuance as a matter of right, which existed in our previous rules, but in this instance, it's only as a matter of right if it's staff requested. Whereas the rules prior to our August 2020 or 23 edits allowed applicants, the public, basically one continuance as a matter of right if anyone requested it. So this really limits it to the staff request. And then as before, it gives you discretion for applicant, appellant, or public requests for a continuance.
Commissioner Shaw?
Thank you. I think this is something that I was concerned about because we had a request for continuance, but then we didn't have any materials provided. So it was basically like we had to continue it, like our hand was forced because there was nothing to review. So I'm just wondering how that would affect this going forward. Like, will I be provided those materials? Will staff be ready to present in the event that we say, hey, no, we're actually not going to continue this for whatever reason?
Ms. Donlin?
Well, as before you in red line, it would allow staff, if they know there's a reason it needs to be continued, they don't have to prepare the whole presentation. They're given one continuance by right for whatever reasoning they have. But I think if it's an applicant requested continuance, staff will be ready to go, and then it'll be up to the commission's discretion on whether that happens or it's continued.
Commissioner?
Through the chair. So then would we just take out the word requested? So it would just be one staff continuance. So they're not actually asking us. We don't have any.
What I envisioned is staff comes up and requests a continuance, because in those instances, a public notice has usually been put in the paper and they need to ask for a continuance. And usually they do it to a date certain. So notice isn't published again in the papers.
Although not always.
Not always.
Depends on the reason.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Craig, I saw you leaning, if you want to help.
Only if any explanation is needed, but the basics of it are we try and have a report done. There are some differing timelines in when we have to have a notice to a newspaper in projection of having an item on an agenda, and when we have to have the final packet prepared. If for whatever reason we're unable to get that packet prepared in a way that is going to be we're comfortable putting forward, then we have the opportunity to do a very quick continuance memorandum instead of trying to put together an incomplete or problematic report. And so there are scenarios where staff comes forward and requests the additional time because we needed it to address an issue that came up last minute or finalize some complicated part of the report. And so there are just certain situations where that occurs.
Commissioner Shaw?
Thank you. I totally understand that. That's not a problem. I ask for, my only issue is as far as it relates to the public and people taking time off work to come down here or be available on Zoom or what have you. And then, we've seen it happen at the last minute. They're like, oh, it's not being presented. And they maybe have to take another day off work sometime in the future. And I don't know that there's anything we can do about that at this level. But I did want to acknowledge that I see that as a problem. And as a member of the public in the past, that would have been a big problem for me to drive down here and then be like, oh, wow, I had no idea this was in the paper. And now I'm here for nothing.
I know in the past, staff has done erratas, and they'd replace the actual staff report with a continuance staff report. So the agenda would clearly, potentially, depending on when the errata came in, potentially show that the item will be continued.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, I guess that would be like, I'm thinking about like my neighborhood and the people who would see it posted on the site if they saw it, or maybe receive something in the mail, then they would not know. Again, nothing we can really do at this level, but wanted to state that.
Except to encourage people to, if they're interested in something, to try to get on the list so that they would get whatever new information came out. It would be just a note to self to stress the opportunity, if you're interested in this, to call or write or whatever is necessary. Any further comments on that one? I like it, personally. That's my comment. Ms. Donlin, is there anything else you want?
No, this is all that's before you. So if you're comfortable, I can make these changes and we can be done, or alternatively, I can make the changes and then bring this before you soon on consent, just so you can verify that your direction's been implemented.
Commissioners? My preference would be to come forward on consent again in consideration of those who are currently present. If there's no objection to that, we need to move forward and ask the public if anybody would like to speak on this matter. Anybody in the chambers want to come forward and talk about the rules? I see no rush to the fore. I see no hands up on Zoom. Madam Clerk, am I missing anything?
No, and we have no new emails either.
Very well, I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment portion of this. Come back to staff, in this case, council. Do you have any further questions before we move forward?
No, thank you, Chair. I'm clear on your direction, and I'll make these changes to the red lines, and then we'll bring this back to either the next meeting or the following meeting on consent.
And it doesn't appear that we need further action from the commission on that, according to how it's agendized. So, unless there's objection, I see no objection from those present, so we'll make it so. All right, I'm going to move now to any department report we may have, and then before we go back to item number 2.
Just really briefly, the board has been on recess, so there's been little action there. HCD is in the process of hiring a number of new people to join our organization. Probably most notably, we're scheduling interviews for our chief of planning position. We hope to have a selection there in the near future, and then to fill any vacancies that may occur as a result of that selection as soon as possible.
Is that it?
That's it.
Any questions or comments about anything Mr. Spencer may or may not have said? Seeing none. All right. I think that that's everything except for item number 2 on our agenda. And I'm going to need to recuse myself from item number 2 due to the fact that Mr. Jeffers is assisting me in a personal lot line adjustment. So I'm going to ask somebody to come forward. Commissioner Roberts, you're close. Would you come forward and share this item, please?
I'll interject that with Commissioner Deal recusing herself and leaving the dais, we will lose our quorum. We'll only have 5 commissioners. A quorum is 6. So the meeting with that ends today, and this will come on another agenda in the future and will be renoticed.
And that happened under Commissioner Roberts' leadership.
Sorry.
So the meeting is now currently closed. It's over with. Thank you, everybody. Well done.